Welcome to, I think this is our third community meeting of the Global Evidence Synthesis Community Initiative, our fabulous long name that we keep getting tongue-tied on. So I have been given the great privilege of being your presenter again today. And Will has also reminded me that I also need to be inspiring. So thank you, Will. I will do my best. But I've told him that if I have to be the one that's inspiring, he's the one that has to answer all the tricky questions. So we'll see how we go. So we thought it would be good to revisit why we're all here. What's the purpose? And I don't think I need to try or work too hard to try to be inspiring here, because we really do have a once in a lifetime opportunity, certainly a once in a generation opportunity, to reimagine the global evidence synthesis community and the way that we work to achieve global goals. So I think that's really exciting, and it means that we have a chance to be the change that we would like to see in the world. And we are just so thrilled that so many people are like-minded and are coming along this journey with us. How's that, Will? Is that a good start?
That's a great start, Zoe.
Excellent. Okay, so we thought it was really important, though, to work through some presuppositions. So we want you to know that we understand that we are working to a very tight deadline, but that has been externally imposed upon us by Wellcome. Wellcome have been very generous as a funder to essentially offer to fund an opportunity for us to tell them how they should be funding us. So it's a super rare and great privilege for us to have this chance, but we are working to their deadlines. It is what we're going to present to you tonight is a very ambitious program of work, and we've tried really, really hard to be as pragmatic as possible. So Will and Carla and I spent 5 days together a couple of weeks ago, locked in a windowless room in London, trying to figure out how we might approach this process with everybody. And we're still friends, so I think that's a good sign. We got to know each other very, very well. And I think we are mildly optimistic. I think we're optimistic about what we can achieve together. So what we're presenting is not going to look perfect. There are still things that we have accepted that we're going to need to perhaps make compromises about along the way, particularly as it relates to timeframes. And parts of the process are still being worked through. But we really thought it was important that we touched base with everybody to let you know where things were up to. We do intend to develop robust guidance. So what I'm presenting to you tonight is very high level. I keep saying tonight because it's my night, but I'm aware that it's different times of the day for everybody. So today, and we really just want to reiterate that at least one co-chair per group needs to be from the Global South. We are absolutely committed to that, and we really hope that a broad range of people will get involved as members of those groups as well. We're really committed to diversity across those groups. So we had a lot of discussion about the working groups versus the planning groups when we met in London. And I think, obviously Wellcome has committed to the working groups, and there had been some discussion that we were going to need as part of this process a conversation about partner engagement, about communication, change management, and monitoring and evaluation and learning. But the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago was, that we didn't get a lot of engagement with those groups when we opened it up for all of you to express interest, and that was perhaps indicative, A, of where your passions were, but B, of where your skill sets are. And we were also of the view that a lot of that work is actually going to be required at a later time, once we have started to work through the issues associated with each of the working groups. And so we've agreed that the governance piece should go ahead alongside the working groups, but we think that the work of the planning groups will start later, probably in April rather than January, and that it might have a slightly different approach attached to it. So what I'm presenting tonight really relates to the working groups. We also thought it was important to outline who the different players are, who the different contributors are and their roles. So we are referring to ourselves as simply a facilitation group. There's sort of no real power or control here. We're just really committed to overseeing a planning process and wanting to ensure that that happens in a timely fashion in accordance with Wellcome's deadlines, and to sort of support people to work through that. The second group is the Building a Global Evidence Synthesis Community group. I really wish we had a better name, but that's all of you, and us all working together through this planning process. The United Nations Global SDG Synthesis Coalition is running a parallel process that really relates to demand side. So we're sort of on the synthesis provider side, and they're working on the demand side. And then we have had PACE and ACRES volunteer to be co-conveners of the consensus meeting. We were really committed to that meeting happening in the Global South. And so it's shaping up that the consensus meeting will occur in Cape Town, which we hope is relatively central and accessible for people as well. So people from those organisations may, put their names forward as part of the expression of interest process to be part of one of the working groups, but they've really been working quite separate to the facilitation group. Okay, so the thinking behind this process it's really informed by what's referred to as a double diamond design framework. And I've put a little diagram there that we found because I think it's nice to get a visual in your mind of what the stages look like. And I apologize because when I present, I use my hands a lot. But in the first couple of stages, we're looking at broadening out our thinking, understanding what the existing evidence synthesis capabilities are. And then the third and fourth phases are really aimed at creating solutions. So bringing it in again and refining our thinking. Each stage of the process will involve 3 steps: an activity to be done by the working groups, a consultation process, and a deliverable. And there's also going to be a bit of a time commitment for people who get involved. So we haven't been prescriptive about how the working groups or the planning groups, whatever they shape up to look like, we haven't been prescriptive about how they need to work, how they need to meet, how frequently they need to meet. And I think that the groups will work that out for themselves. But there are going to be 3 key milestone meetings. The first will be a kick-off meeting in December, as long as everything goes according to plan, where we will review in detail the process with the co-chairs. We then thought it was really important for us to have a check-in meeting at the sort of midway point that will be in person in London in March. The reason that it was London is because we wanted to be able to have people from Wellcome accessible, and others from across those other groups. So that won't just be the co-chairs, it would be people from the United Nations Global SDG Synthesis Coalition, funders, Wellcome, perhaps others, and obviously the co-conveners of the meeting. And then the consensus meeting in Cape Town in June will be everybody. So all of the members of the working groups, us, the co-chairs, SDG Synthesis Coalition, everybody will come together next June, which will be very exciting. We all felt that the consultation process was really going to be key, and that this ideally will happen in a range of different ways. We are hoping that all of the groups will consult with topic-specific, what we're calling interest holders. I don't know if there are people on the line who were responsible for the publication that I've referenced down the bottom there, but it's a very recent publication that's come out of Canada. Throughout this presentation, I'm just going to hold my hands up and say it's been really difficult to select language that is going to be appropriate and meaningful globally. So we've done our very best, but even in a room with an Englishman, somebody from Brazil and somebody from Australia, and then John Lavis from Canada joins us on occasion, and all of us use different language to describe some of these different groups of people. So I apologize in advance, and I'm just hoping that what we've got makes sense to people. But we're using the term interest holders as being groups or individuals with a legitimate interest or some level of expertise in the focus area for that working group. And we hope that those people will be engaged by the working groups throughout their discussions. But at the same time, we thought it was really important to have an open consultation for every stage where anybody in our community or even beyond our community can respond and react to the findings as we progress. This is probably one of the pieces to flag as being imperfect, and we know that. But again, trying to make some compromises around timeframes. We thought that if we put the draft documents up via the website and then do some form of survey that would be open for a period of a week so that we could get people's responses, and we would also publish those responses. We intend to put the timing of that open consultation process, we'll publish it at the start so that everybody knows when they're coming, and you can schedule some time so that you're ready for it and we don't surprise you with it. Again, we just really want to emphasize that the credibility of the report that's developed at the end is really reliant on making sure that we get as diverse contributions and perspectives as possible. And so we're trying to do that in as meaningful a way as we possibly can in the timeframes. There are going to be a whole variety of ways that groups and individuals can engage with this process. We are anticipating that there will be around 20 members per working group, but we are very conscious that there are only 5 working groups. There will be 2 co-chairs for each group, and then group members. Obviously, people can engage in the open consultation process, excuse me, and the open meetings, but there will also be, we hope, individual consultation, and I'll speak to the research support roles and other roles that we're trying to build into the budget at the moment a little bit later. So stage 1 is the discovery phase. We've tried to use plain language. What have we got? We want to know the scale and complexity of the existing capabilities that we have in relation to evidence synthesis across the ecosystem. We know that we're not starting from scratch. Many of us have been working in this sector for a very long time, and we know that there are some very well advanced capabilities across our sector. And so it's kind of a fact-finding mission, and during this stage, we hope that each working group will conduct what we're calling a capability mapping exercise. So looking at all of the available systems, resources, processes, people across all of those working groups. There will be a consultation phase, obviously, and at the end, the deliverable rather will be this capability profile. So really broad thinking, big long list of all of the things that relate to the focus area of the working group. In stage 2, we want to start to shift our thinking into what do we need? So this is the define phase of the double diamond process. And it's where we start to distill information and data that we gathered in stage 1. It's designed to focus our attention on specific areas as a starting point for identifying potential solutions that happen in stage 3. So as part of this, we want to assess the current and target maturity for each capability. So as I said, there are some of us that have been developing methodologies or synthesis technology or short courses, for example, to help with capacity sharing. So there's a whole range of capabilities that exist. Some of those are really well advanced and have been around and in development for a very long time, and others are still in their infancy. And we will provide templates for all of these exercises as well, partly to help guide the process and partly so that we end up with something really consistent that we can put together in a meaningful way at the end. But we don't just want to know what the current capability maturity is. We also want you to start thinking about the gaps. So where do we not have any capability? So that's also going to be key to this process, part of the process. Okay, stage 3 is where we want to start thinking how we get there. It's the development phase. So we want people to be brainstorming lots of different ideas that might be developed into solutions to take forward. So again, if you think about that double diamond process, we've gone out and in, and now we're going out again. So based on the output of stage 2, we want working groups to start exploring potential strategies to either enhance or strengthen existing capabilities. And I've put the example of Prospero in there. I know that that was one that John was particularly passionate about because it's a capability that exists, but it doesn't have sustainable funding. Just to give you an idea of where some of these conversations might land. Or equally, to resolve a capability gap where we have absolutely nothing, no starting point whatsoever. Again, it will be open for consultation and feedback. And then at the end, we hope that each working group will be able to produce a document that outlines a set of strong, well-defined strategies for strengthening capabilities in their focus area. And stage 4 is deliver. So we're coming back in again. And we're hoping that this stage will bring together all of the work that's been done in the first 3 stages together to formulate some recommendations. And we want each working group to attempt to determine how to best invest time, funding, and resources for maximum impact across those identified solutions. And again, we're hoping to have a template for you to do an impact effort matrix and thinking about what could we do now, what might we do next, and what can wait until later. Again, open community consultation, and then we hope to bring all of this together in a final report. Now, I think it's important to say here that some of these activities may well be light touch. We really are just going to have to do the best that we can in the time that we have, and I think accept that it's not going to be perfect, but it will be indicative, I think, of what we have and where we might start to think about going. So that's the double diamond, but we also appreciated that there was probably some extra work that needed to be done that didn't quite fit that mold. And so what we are proposing is that towards the end of stage 3, we would look at doing some costing. So we did talk about at quite some length the idea of doing some economic modelling. But I think it's going to be really challenging to do that and perhaps out of scope for this exercise. So really, it's just looking at what are the strategies that have come up through this process and what do we think they will cost to do, because that's a really important part of this picture. At this point, we think that we may also, depending on what comes out of the working groups, be in a position to seek some support from consultants or experts to start looking at some of those issues as they relate to the work of the planning groups. And there may be people across our community who are interested in engaging with that as well, but we haven't yet determined exactly what the planning group process will look like, but we expect that there will be some additional support and expertise needed for that. And really, we want to get to a point where we can all come together in Cape Town for a meeting. We are calling it a consensus meeting, but in the most pragmatic sense, that we don't think it's necessarily going to be possible to get 200 odd people in a room and get everybody to agree exactly on everything. But we'll do our very best. We want to land in a place where we have a fully costed description of what might be needed, at what cost, and when. And so we acknowledge that this is not work that people can simply pick up and do when you're all working full time in pretty demanding jobs. And so we are hoping to build in some support for this process. What I've got here is very high level. We are still working on the proposal for Wellcome, but we expect that there will be some program management support. So that's a program manager for the entire process, and some administrative support so that it's not Will and Carla and I trying to set meetings for all of you. And as I mentioned, some consultants with specialist expertise that might be pulled in to support the economic piece, or it might be looking at issues of EDI or some of those other planning group initiatives. On the working group and planning group side, we'd really like to make sure that you have research support to help with that consultation process, to draw in expertise, those interest holder groups, to do data collection and analysis, to help write up reports. We're anticipating, or we're hoping, that those people might be from the Global South and that they might be early career researchers. But we also think that you're going to need some level of administrative support as well. As I said, this terminology may well change, but I was just trying to find language that I thought might be beneficial or meaningful across a whole range of different people. And again, if groups determine that they require consultants with specialist knowledge and expertise, we're hoping to have some room in the budget to be able to provide that as well. So as I've touched on, there is a proposal that is being put together. The original plan was that those 3 groups that I mentioned at the start would develop their own concept notes for the Wellcome Trust, but we are now pulling together, or John rather, is pulling together a consolidated proposal that is this group, the Building a Global Evidence Synthesis Community Initiative, the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition, and the Pace and Acres co-conveners for the consensus meeting. So rather than a research award, this is a planning award to support the process that we've described. There are no guarantees that we will be successful. We feel like we are taking a measured risk in applying for this funding. We feel relatively confident that we're going to get it, but it is not a fait accompli. There's absolutely no guarantee. But we thought it was important to first update you on the fact that there is a planning proposal being prepared, and we expect that will be submitted to Wellcome in the next couple of weeks. And I think it's important to say that there aren't guarantees that we'll be successful, but we're pretty confident. Okay, so hopefully we haven't scared you all off with that process. We are hoping to have expression of interest, the expressions of interest open after this meeting, or there's another meeting happening on the other end of people's days for other time zones. So in the next couple of days, we will have forms and terms of reference available on the website. The expression of interest process will only be open for 2 weeks at this stage. We understand that is really super tight and really ambitious. If we get to the end of that 2 weeks and we don't have sufficient people, we are going to have to pivot a little bit, but we don't want to do that too much, because whatever time we borrow at this end, we're going to pay for at the other end. And we'd really prefer that the working groups were established before Christmas and could kickstart their work in January. We'd like to meet with the co-chairs and members of groups for the kickoff meeting on the 17th and 18th of December, ideally. So Will and Carla and I are not going to have any sleep or any rest until Christmas. This presentation and the slides will be available on the website, so don't worry if I've gone too fast. I've tried to slow down my speech because I get told all the time that I have a very strong Australian accent and I talk too fast. So we will make sure that you can revisit the information that we've presented today. And we've got a timeline, a rough timeline up there with key dates for you to start thinking and planning for next year. And hopefully you're all thinking that you feel like you've got lots of energy and you're ready to get involved and contribute to this really exciting and important piece of work. And so finally, I just wanted to remind people that we do have a website. It's not a fancy website, but it does the job, and it just gives us an avenue to share information with you. As I said, the expression of interest forms, all of the presentations, the recordings, key documents, key dates, everything that we have that we're able to share with you is on that website. So I'm now going to stop sharing and open up so that you can ask Will all of your questions.
Zoe,
Is there anything, Will and Carla, that you would like to add or that I've missed?
Just well done. Thank you. That's a lot to get through. I thought it was very clear personally, but that's from having spent a lot of time thinking about it. Carla?
I think you've been fantastic and represented our thinking. But the only thing I would say that people are asking, there is a lot of comments, is that there is going to be expression of interest and everybody can put themselves forward. And Laura is specifically asking how we're going to judge that. So just to say, we are in the expression of interest, collecting information to be as diverse as we can. And if any one of you have other ideas, this is really one key thing that we all are committed to have a diverse group of people. And we all think that is a better way to have different people thinking through this process and going with the process with us. These are tight timelines. And so if you have an idea and reach out to us, we are going to need any help we can.
Okay, so we've got half an hour to do Q&A. I've counted 8 questions in the comments already that I want to come to, and I think that just became 9. And I'm sure that number will go up. What I suggest we do is I'll read out the questions that are already in the comments and we'll try to answer them. Some of them already have answers in the comments. And then if the person who asked the question wants to come back and respond to that answer or clarify anything, jump in at that point, rather than asking you to read out a question you've already posted. I can see that Patrick has his hand up and we'll come to him for a question after that. Feel free to either put your hand up or come to questions in the comments box, and we'll try to cover as much ground as we can as quickly as we can. I'm going to start with 3 questions in a row, which are all about the process, try to answer them and then ask people if they want to respond. Anna May Scott asked, what are the anticipated timelines for each of the 4 stages, which Zoe covered on her last slide, and that will be on the website, but essentially 4 to 5 weeks for each stage. So it is a tight process and we're really aware of that. Harry Waddle asked if the expression of interest forms are for both working group members or just co-chairs. For both. And we'd really encourage you. It will be very easy to assume, oh, this is something for someone else. We are not making that assumption. We really believe this needs a broad range of people to participate for this to work. So if you think you might be interested and then you think, oh no, it's probably somebody else they're looking for, please stop thinking that second thought, jump in and get involved and help make this happen. And then Ruth Stewart asked, will the consensus meeting in June be open to all? No, we're talking about an in-person meeting here. So as Zoe said, we imagine this having participation from everybody who's involved in the working groups, from the UN and other demand side people, from funders and from others in the community, but we're looking at, I think, about 200 people as the practical maximum number of people being involved. So we want to run this as far as possible as an open process, but that consensus meeting being an in-person process will have limits on the numbers. And that's as much as we know about that at the moment. So those were 3 questions, just very practical questions on the process. Any response or follow-up from Anna May Scott, Kerry Waddle, or Ruth Stewart? Okay, I'm going to go on to 2 questions from Laura Boyer and Jan Minks about participation. Laura Boyer asked what countries will be considered global south, and if we have many people wanting to be in the working groups, who will decide and whether we're still using the region scheme. And Jan Minks, who said nice things about the process design, thank you very much, points out that in most of the social sciences, the synthesis community is tiny and the challenge is mainstreaming, which is a really critical challenge for us. So how will we work with that? So again, we really want to stress the breadth of participation is what will make this work. And that's why we put so much emphasis on consultation. Clearly, we need a good broad range of people in the room. We also need to actively go out and engage with people who haven't chosen to be in the room or who didn't able to have time or whatever to be in the room. That's why we want full-time staff for each of these groups. So as well as people who can volunteer their time to be actively involved, we have staff who have the time to actively go out and seek to engage a wider range of people and use the groups to kind of stimulate that conversation. I don't think, or at least Zoe, Carla, and I have not talked about a set list of who counts as the global south. And I don't think we really think of it in quite those legalistic terms. What we committed to from day one of this is broad participation, equitable and open participation, balanced by regions, balanced by resource settings, balanced by sectors. I don't think we're going to be ticking off a checkbox. We're going to be trying to operate in the spirit of that commitment. And that region scheme, for example, I think at one point either a UN or a World Bank or somebody else's list of regions in the world was put on a slide somewhere. We're not wedded to any of them. None of them are perfect. It's about having genuinely broad participation. So, Carla, is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. And it will largely depend on who we get coming forward as well. So, you know, whoever we have in our pool of people who express interest, we'll do our very best to be as fair and equitable and, you know, inclusive of diversity as possible.
Yeah, and it's fair to say Global South, what does it mean? You know, there is always this thing about terms. So we are using terms that others are using to be more coherent, but what we want is the diversity. I think we are all very keen, and that's why in the expression of interest, there is a question about country, there's a question about career development, there are questions to build up this diversity for the working groups. And sectors, Jan Mix mentioned, and it's true, some sectors are more developed than others, so we're going to have to balance sectors so that we actually have opportunity to bring everyone to the table.
Yeah, and that for those of you who don't know me, I'm from the Campbell Collaboration, which is there to support evidence synthesis in the social sciences. And Jan is completely right. It does mean that in the sectors where we have fewer people, we're going to be asking more proportionately to step up and make time. And I recognize that everybody is busy, but you know, there are a lot more people doing evidence synthesis in clinical research than there are doing it in lots of areas of public policy where evidence synthesis has barely scratched the surface. And in order to fill 6 diverse working groups, we're going to need people to really step up and want to be part of this. And again, to emphasize, it doesn't matter if you've had a leadership role before. This can be your opportunity to have your first leadership role. It's about getting that breadth from those different perspectives at the table. I just want to pick up one other aspect of Laura's question and then go back to Laura and Jan for a response, because she asked, how will we decide who actually goes on the working groups and becomes the co-chairs? I think the answer is we're not quite sure yet. It partly depends how many people volunteer. Carla, Zoe, and I are going to take responsibility for making that process work and coming out with a group of selections that is credible to the community and that is fair and balanced and so on. That doesn't necessarily mean we want to make those decisions ourselves, but we, you know, if there are hundreds of people all volunteering for the same roles, that's one thing. If it's actually there aren't many volunteers, that's another. So we're not entirely sure exactly what that process will look like, but it will be done in consultation with the UN people, with the Wellcome people, and in an attempt to make it as open and equitable as possible. But we haven't sat down and kind of set out specifically how that will happen at this stage.
Ruth did also ask about the relationship between the process that the SDG Synthesis Coalition is running and our process. And they are happening, my understanding is that they are happening concurrently and that we will all come together, all participants will come together in Cape Town next June. Have I got that right?
That is my understanding as well. Yeah. I'm going to pause there and ask if Jan, whose hand is up, or Laura want to respond to either of those responses and then move on to another batch of questions. Jan.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the organization and this great meeting. My question, like part of my question was also related just to the fact that in those communities, you know, it's not only a matter that there are few people and there's a heavy burden of work. The question is to what extent those people can actually represent these communities. Because, I mean, think of Campbell, usually very highly qualified evidence synthesis experts, but most of the people, most of the peers in their social science communities have, I mean, I'm now exaggerating, but have no clue. So to what extent is our perception then of the capabilities in this sector really you know, can actually meet the needs, and also that there are in the sector, and also, you know, to what extent can we actually, what are our kind of black spots, blind spots, no, not black spots, blind spots, that we will that we are unable to actually reflect on. So the question is, do we need in those communities to adjust the process a little bit, for example, to widen, to consciously invite people who do not have such great evidence synthesis expertise to actually serve those communities? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart question, Jan, and let me not try to answer it right now, but let's see who puts their hands up for these groups, and then kind of go from there. But I would just say the broader point about understanding the gaps is really fundamental to this process. And the reason we start out with what capabilities do we have now? And, you know, we all know basically there will be a lot more capabilities in health than most other fields. But what capabilities do we have now will partly expose what do we have in health that would be great to have in other areas, and other areas where we can learn across, and then saying where are the gaps. All of that is about trying to situate what don't we know as well as what do we know, and to avoid starting this process with assumptions about what are the problems that need to be solved or the things that money needs to be spent on. Laura, did you want to come in at this point, or shall I move on to the next questions? Okay, I've got a question, and a very important question, from Javier Bosch-Capelange, who said, at some point there will be prospects of allocation of funding to specific initiatives, people or institutions. How will this be transparently brought into place to ensure equal opportunity scenarios? First thing to say is we really hope this process will help this community and the funders who are working with this community move in that direction. And that's a big goal of this process. And in stage 3, what we're asking people to do is talk about how the gaps identified in stage 2 could be filled. And in stage 4, we're asking people to come up with an impact effort grid. What are the highest impact, lowest effort opportunities? What we're not asking people to do is say what money should be spent on what things. And we're very explicitly trying to separate those questions. So an example of kind of how could we fill a gap might be, what we need is this kind of initiative, say a training initiative, an online training initiative. And an online training initiative needs a team with some online training expertise and some synthesis expertise and some AI expertise to work together, and that would be a good thing to fund. And there might be lots and lots of statements like that that come out at stage 3 and start to be prioritized at stage 4. It will then be up to funders what they do with the outputs of this process. So they might or they might not decide to do a call or a procurement exercise in relation to any of these things that have been identified as potentially useful. But the goal of this process is to set out, if you like, in a way that is neutral about who might do the work or how money might be spent, what the needs are, and what might make a difference. Sorry, Carla, does that make sense? Do you want to expand on that answer at all?
No, I think it's a good answer. I just want to remind you that Patrick and Yukashuk they are waiting for quite some time.
Yeah. Zoe?
Yeah, no, I was just going to reiterate that Patrick and I'm so sorry, I don't know how to say the name, but they've been waiting for some time. I will be appalling if I try and say it.
Okay, thank you very much.
To respond to that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Will, Carla, and Zoe, for this presentation. Yes, I was already struggling to type out what I wanted to say in the message. It was a little bit long and a bit difficult to put this in the message, but I was just pivoting from the point of diversity, which Carla mentioned. And why I felt like this is very important is because of our experience in working across in collaborating with both Campbell, Cochrane and JBI from knowledge synthesis, contextualization, and we've actually done some contextualization with the Education Endowment Foundation. But this contextualization and innovations that have been based on us looking at the global evidence that is out there and our own context. This includes translating into local languages, developing innovative tools or toolkits that would actually use existing synthesized evidence in our context, both for policymakers, for practitioners, and for households. And this is something that at eBase we've been able to develop over a long time. And we are really, really anxious and itchy to see how we can bring this on board, this global synthesis collaboration. And what I'm mainly interested in is how can you ensure that these voices are brought to the table in a way that we could be able to bring up and put these things in a way that even you would be able to understand, and then we can build tools that will draw from whatever existing global context to our local context. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Given Zoe's start to this meeting, I'll try a first response and see if anyone else wants to join in. That was really helpful. I guess the answer is we can't ensure that voices are brought to the table. We're asking you to. We've tried to create a table, and we tried to create as open a process as we possibly can in the time available. This is a good moment, I think, to stress that if you're thinking about putting yourself forward as a potential co-chair, please understand that that role is about facilitating a conversation and bringing in voices from all across the community. We are not necessarily looking for the people who are or see themselves as the biggest experts on the topic to come and chair the groups. We're looking for the people who can bring together the community and get the best expertise out of the community as a whole. And that's why we designed the process with stage one, which is understanding all of the strengths that already exist in the community, and then thinking about gaps before we start thinking about, what do we need to do next? And we hope, therefore, we've created a process that creates the space for those conversations to happen. And we hope that the people who come forward to lead this process will then lead it in a way that creates that space. But Zoe, Carla, and I have committed to not being co-chairs of any of these groups, right? We've set ourselves up to facilitate this process, to make it happen. In a few weeks' time, the leadership of this process hands over to the co-chairs of those groups. And it will be up to you, whoever you are, some of you, I hope, on this call, to respond to Patrick's challenge, to be honest. Carla, Zoe, do you want to?
Look, I agree. And I think that what we will continue to reiterate throughout this process is that this should not be the voice of the few. This should be the voice of as many people as possible, which is why we talked so much about the consultation process. And that, not only should it not be just the voices of the co-chairs, but it should not just be a reflection of what the working groups believe or what the working groups find by themselves. There should be really deep consultation as well. And again, I know we're really being ambitious and we're asking a lot in a really short amount of time, but that's why we're trying to build into the budget these people to support the working groups, to be able to go out and chase the interest holders and bring those, to extend the reach, I suppose, of the working groups as they work through that process. And I think it's a really good point, and I'm glad that you raised it, Patrick, because it is just so fundamental to the success of this. And we're very conscious of that. So, I think we will continue, and I hope that you do too, to push that agenda as we go along. And I think extending out this group so that for the open consultation process, so that we're not just reaching the people that we've currently got on our email list. I hope that when we publish the open consultation dates, that all of you are pushing those out to as many people in your networks as you know as well.
Yeah, and that's my point. We're going to publish the consultation dates as soon as possible from the beginning so that people know that they'll have a week to respond or to move it to other people that they know. And there is a very important point here that the understanding the gaps is as important as understanding the capabilities. So just that, take into account that, you know, as Zoe and Will said, we need to be pragmatic. We need to have something in the end of this process to give to Wellcome. We're not making decisions about funds. We're making decisions about the planning process. So the fund decisions are for Wellcome to make, but we want to have as inclusive and diverse views. And Patrick, I mean, I've learned a lot from you last week in terms of storytelling. I came back very inspired by what you and your team have done. So I think we need to capture these things that, you know, we have to learn with our community.
I see a thumbs up from Patrick, so thank you very much. There are a bunch more questions in the chat that I'll try to come to, but Ukachukwu has his hand up if you'd like to jump in.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Will, Zoe, and Carla, for the great amount of effort that has gone into this piece of work. I mean, it's a very short timeline for all the stuff you guys have produced. So a very big thumbs up for the huge amount of work. My question is had been asked by Patrick and the previous person, but the other remaining one is just some kind of, we understand that the whole thing that had been happening is some kind of co-creation efforts to understand what had been there, what is lacking, and what needs to be done. And you guys have come up with great, I would say, pragmatic kind of steps that need to be taken to get to where we're going. So I'm just asking or just reflecting within myself. I understand that each of the working groups and say planning groups, they have some unique, I would say, challenges. Some of the working group may get some kind of well-developed kind of resources at different aspects of the work and all that. So it is possible that at different stages that have been proposed, we might come to a point whereby we need to tweak some certain things, and then the process will not just move in sequence from one to another one. So are there scope for us to be pragmatic ourselves within the working groups to maybe jump a stage and come back again, some kind of iteration in the spirit of co-production? So that's just what I'm reflecting, you know, looking at the whole presentation. Thank you, by the way, Zoe. That was a lovely presentation.
Oh, thank you. Look, I think there is opportunity to be iterative, and I think particularly when we get to the end and we come together at the consensus meeting, there will be a lot of discussion. And we spoke briefly with John Lavis, who unfortunately is on a plane going home to Canada at the moment, and so can't be with us. But we talked about the consensus meeting and how that might work. And we understand that there, you know, that will potentially surface a lot of tensions and, you know, and things that maybe one group has thought about that another group hasn't. And so critical to that process will be facilitation and having the opportunity to have dialogue, not just in a big plenary room with all of us, but to be able to break off as we need to. And I think it will be quite organic. I think it's going to be a really different style of meeting to anything that any of us are used to attending, because I think that, you know, that meeting in and of itself will iterate as we move across the 3 days to try and navigate our way to a point where we have something that we can deliver. And I expect that that will be the same throughout, and I think we need to be prepared for that.
Thank you so very much.
Great question.
I'm conscious that we only have 5 minutes left. Zhenggang has his hand up, so I'd like to go to Zheng.
I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay, thank you. So nice presentation. And just like Will said that also in China that there are more evidence-based things in health field than in the social science field. And although there are few evidence-based things in social science field, and now more and more researchers know the systematic review, but now they are focused on this is just a research method. Few people to really understand how to use the evidence synthesis in the policy stage, such as make the social intervention guideline or standard in China. This is some conditions. So I think perhaps at the beginning, now the global evidence synthesis communities can collaborate with some international organizations that produce some of the examples to focus on a problem to use the evidence, produce a guideline or standard. That I think in China, some of the policymakers, they know, okay, how to use the evidence policy making conception and method to solve the problem in developed countries. So this is one of my ideas. The other is in the past, we have the conference. Most people are from the evidence-based practice field, and so perhaps in the future we should involve more communities or activities hosted by other field. It's not just from the EBP field. That's what I means. Okay, thank you. Nice work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shengang. For those of you who don't know him, Shengang leads the Campbell China Network, which is pioneering evidence-informed decision-making across China, across the social sciences and public policy, and is a really inspiring group. We are hoping to work with them to host a Chinese language meeting about this initiative in the next few weeks, because we do want to try to make this a truly global process. And there's about a sixth of the world's population, I think, in China, who we have not been hearing enough from so far. So thank you, Shengang, for your leadership here. I think that question relates to a question from Andrew Pullen in the chat about the breadth of coverage, covering environment and so on. And again, this is now on all of us. All we can do is create a process. Whether people step up to occupy spaces in that process and lead is now up to everybody else. I will say that there is a planning group that we deferred until after the working groups on partnerships, which was due to think explicitly about how the synthesis community relates to other evidence communities, such as guidelines, science advice, statistics, and so on. And we still think that's a really important piece of work, but we felt that it would be more effectively done after the working groups had done their work. So it seems very clear that one of the recommendations that is likely to come out of this process is social sciences and public policy needs to catch up with health. Let's talk about how. And I'm really excited about the talking about how. We only have 2 minutes left. Carla, Zoe, you've probably seen more of the chat than I have recently. Are there any questions you particularly want to respond to in the time available?
There are a few people asking about languages other than English. And so I just thought it was worth highlighting that we are very conscious of that and wanting to make sure that we build in support and mechanisms to ensure that people have an opportunity to engage in their own language. And we are building into the budget, hopefully, some support for translation, whether that's of meetings or documents or, or anything that we produce as part of this.
Yeah, and that was exactly my point. If any of you would like to work with us on doing a webinar on your language, I've just reached out obviously to Laura and others in Portuguese and Spanish speaking. I'm more than happy to organize it together with you, but also other languages will find a way, that we introduced, we present, give you the material, and we can actually do at least at the very minimum. And John Lavis has offered to do a Francophone one, what I think is also important. So we have done quite a lot on the past, I don't even know how long, 3 weeks. And so not all the pieces are in place at the moment, but we're very, very conscious about language and about wider participation. And my experience, at least in Brazil, is that if you go and have a conversation in Portuguese, the conversation is much richer. So we're very conscious, and we count on you to help us to actually, so that we can deliver these in different languages.
I see in chat that we have offers for Spanish, Portuguese, and French meetings, some of which are already being organized. And that's a brilliant example of what this process ought to look like if we are genuinely doing it together. So thank you so much. I've been really
team.
to see the positive reactions in the chat. It's really nice to know that this is a thing that could take off. And just going to end with a few of the practical questions that have been asked. If you were in one of the discussion groups discussing the various working groups in the previous open meeting, that has no bearing on what groups you can express interest to be part of. This completely open process, see what groups you're interested in. We will include information about what each group is about in the expressions of interest information on the website. That will go up tomorrow. So it'll be a completely open process. It'll be on the website tomorrow. It will explain what each of the groups will do. We look forward to hearing from you, and I'll make sure our email addresses or an email address is available on the website. So if you've got any questions, there's also a form available on the website. So if you want to ask any questions or leave any comments anonymously, you can. But this has been great. Thank you so much. And if you really want to, there's another meeting in about 12 hours time, the details of which are in your email. And we'll see you there. And all these Q&As, of course, will go on the website as well. Zoe, Carla, any last words?
Just thank you so much, everybody, for attending and engaging, and looking forward to moving forward together. It's exciting.
Thank you all. I think it's been fantastic looking at the chats. And I think, we really are very keen that this is all of us. So thank you.